Homage to Buddha Shakyamuni, homage to Manjushri, homage to all the lineage masters. Profound and subtle dharma is rarely encountered in eons. Now we can follow it. May we realize the Tathagata's meaning. To liberate all sentient beings, please generate unsurpassed bodhicitta. Now we will discuss an overview of the Guhyagarbha Tantra, Luminous Essence. We are now on the chapter on Samaya. Within the topic of Samaya, we've already covered the classification of Samaya and its essence, along with some of its further points. Now we come to the third point, the crucial points concerning Samaya. These are some of the crucial points of Samaya, that is, certain of its secret essentials. Within Mantrayana Samayas of great methods, all disciplines, vows of personal liberation, and bodhisattva training are perfectly complete and extremely pure. Just as we explained a moment ago in the introduction, within the Samaya of secret mantra, that is, within the Samaya of the secret mantra of great methods, the vows of personal liberation of the lesser vehicle and the bodhisattva vows are all completely included. So when we compare these aspects, the conduct here is purer. We should all understand this. Many people think that perhaps one need only take the mantra vows, and that the vows of personal liberation and the bodhisattva vows do not have to be kept. I have mentioned before that many people hold this misunderstanding, but this way of explaining is unreasonable. All of its qualities are present in an enhanced way, while anything not permitted by the vows of the lesser vehicle or the bodhisattva vows, including actions that in themselves give rise to afflictions, should be avoided. So in fact, the mantra vows can encompass the bodhisattva vows and the vows of personal liberation, whereas the vows of the two lower vehicles cannot encompass or include the mantra vows. This may seem contradictory to what is commonly accepted as conduct and may even seem to oppose the lower vehicles. Nevertheless, not only is that not the case, mantra's conduct surpasses that of any other. Some of the conduct held in common, such as killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, and lying or refraining from the 10 non-virtues and from harming beings. These are common to both the sutra and mantra vehicles, so there is no need to explain them further. Then there is conduct that on the surface appears to somewhat contradict the vows of personal liberation, such as the matter of desire that we discussed yesterday, or killing a being solely in order to benefit beings, like the Captain Great Compassion killing the dark man with the short spear. Such conduct, which on the surface looks contrary to the mantra and the personal liberation vows, in fact not only does not contradict them, but if practiced in this way carries great qualities and surpasses them. On the surface it may seem to go against the pratimoksha vows, but in truth, when we really examine the meaning within it, not only is there no contradiction, the qualities are perfected in an enhanced way. For example, here he puts it this way. For example, it is taught at the time of personal liberation that a root defeat is based on the combination of object, intention, activity, and final result, these four. Generally speaking, in the context of the vows of personal liberation, whether it involves killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, or lying, each one of these precepts involves the factor of object, the factor of intention, the factor of activity, and the factor of final result. If all four of these are complete, then that precept is said to have been broken. In the vows of personal liberation, this is called a root defeat. One has broken one of the four root precepts. But the vows of personal liberation, in fact, become one part of the mantra vows. When measured by the mantra vows, the vows of personal liberation mean to abstain from harming others. In addition to that, bodhisattva training means to benefit others. Therefore, through compassionate intentions and without the stain of self-interest, a bodhisattva could even engage in adultery and the like. And not only would no fault be accrued, only qualities would arise. As we just said, in terms of the four root precepts for the vows of the lesser vehicle, these may not be transgressed. To transgress them breaks the four root precepts. When measured by the mantra vows, the fundamental principle of these vows of the lesser vehicle is to abstain from harming other beings. Because the vows of personal liberation also emphasize the four practices of a shramana, they put a stop to any harmful intent toward all beings. On this basis, what is the bodhisattva vehicle? It is to have an altruistic mind, and on that basis a bodhisattva has a kind of selflessness, or free of self-interest may through great compassion even engage in adultery, as in the story of the Brahmin woman that we discussed earlier. In that way, when driven by intense great compassion, whether it is killing, stealing, lying, or sexual misconduct, these are not only free of fault, but become qualities. It is taught that based upon attachment to personal interests, a defeat constitutes complete immersion with personal praise, disparagement of others, and failure to give of the Dharma or personal wealth due to avarice. But in the Bodhisattva vows, this differs somewhat from before. If with a selfish mind, under a selfish motive, just as is taught among the Bodhisattva root precepts, one praises oneself and disparages others, this does in fact break a root precept. Out of stinginess, failing to give dharma or the gift of wealth also becomes a root defeat of the bodhisattva vows. So within the bodhisattva vows, a selfish mind in particular is a very grave fault. Here then we are comparing the three sets of vows. We should all analyze them carefully in terms of their meaning. For the vehicle of mantra, based on having gained confidence with the view of evenness, there is no conceptualizing of object-subject. So, what looks like killing and the rest lacks even the slightest ordinary object, intention, activity, or final result. According to relative truth, through the activity of skillful means and prajna, this is a special means through which to fulfill the two enlightened deeds. The Mantrayana vows are somewhat different because they are guided by the view of evenness. At that point, neither the apprehended object nor the apprehending subject can be found. This is because the fundamental view of Mantrayana is the indivisibility of purity and evenness. With this view, neither perceived objects nor the perceiving mind are taken as real. So what on the surface looks like killing, sexual misconduct, or lying, and so on, has not the slightest of the impure, ordinary quality that people now perceive. There is no intention, no object, no activity, and no final result. Moreover, it is guided by the wisdom of the indivisibility of purity and evenness, as well as by the skillful means of intense great compassion. When guided in this way, it becomes a skillful means even on the relative level. Not only does it not become a negative action, but even on the relative level, as we discussed yesterday, when it is guided by skillful means and realization, it becomes wisdom and a cause for accumulating merit. From the perspective of being unsullied by faults, there is personal liberation, and from the perspective of benefiting others, the bodhisattva vow is also perfected. In this case, the action itself does not become negative, because it is guided by the view and skillful means and therefore leaves no stain. Moreover, this form of discipline includes both the vows of personal liberation and the altruistic bodhisattva vows. Therefore, for someone who understands the Mantrayana view of the indivisibility of purity and evenness, keeping the vows of personal liberation and bodhisattva vows becomes very easy. Indeed, once he realizes that all phenomena are the indivisibility of purity and evenness, then all the qualities of personal liberation and the bodhisattva vows are naturally perfected. No stain from breaking the lesser vehicle or bodhisattva vows can harm such a person, because they are guided by powerful compassion and wisdom, and within relative truth the merit he accumulates is also extremely vast. Like iron gradually becoming silver and then gold, the end value is included in the initial worth. Originally, there is iron ore that the fire has not yet smelted, and later, through smelting, it gradually becomes silver and gold. In fact, this is already present within the ore, as Mipham Rinpoche explains in his other treatises. In that way, within the gold that comes later, the components of the earlier metal and silver, or their value, are naturally complete. So here, the iron refers to the vows of personal liberation, silver refers to the bodhisattva vows, and gold corresponds to the mantra vows. Within the Mantrayana vows, all these qualities mentioned earlier are present in an even greater and more valuable form. Another example is that if a copper vessel is used as a bedpan, it is considered to be filthy. Originally, there is a copper vessel. The copper is first made into a waste bin, which is impure. Yet when that same copper vessel is used as a tray, it is then considered to be clean. If used to make offerings to the deities, the same copper vessel is considered perfectly pure. Finally, it is made into an offering cup, made into purer vessels for offering to the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. And if used to make a statue of Buddha, it then becomes an object for offering. Originally, it was a piece of copper. At first, it was made into a waste bin, then made into a tray for use, then made into an offering cup, reworked again and again, and then the offering cup is once more made into a Buddha statue. There are 4 stages. Likewise, take that impure object just now. When the afflictions of the 5 poisons, desire, anger, and delusion, are worked with directly and purified into something like a copper vessel, this corresponds to the pratimoksha vows. Holding the desire, anger, and delusion in our mind stream as something to be abandoned is the vows of personal liberation. Then, when it becomes a vessel for offering, that is the bodhisattva vows. Finally, when it becomes a Buddha statue, that is the mantra vows. It is all made from the same piece of copper, but at different stages, its value and the respect people show it are different. The piece of copper that was once a waste bin is finally made into a Buddha image. In fact, the material used to make the Buddha statue is exactly the same as the material that was once used for the trash bin. By the same principle in Mantrayana, whether afflictions are recognized as awakening or simply taken to be afflictions, their essential nature remains exactly the same. But because the stages are different and they are guided in different ways, their value is expressed differently. So on the conventional level, we need analogies like these to explain the relationship among the vows of the 3 vehicles. This is very important. Likewise, if all activities of the 3 doors are engaged in accord with the afflictions that will bind one to samsara, this is the direct indulgence of desire, anger, and delusion. As we discussed yesterday, all actions of body, speech, and mind that arise directly from desire, anger, and delusion become causes for falling into samsara. That becomes the cause for higher rebirth and eventual liberation. This is the vows of personal liberation. Whether we take the lay precepts or the monastic vows, when they are guided by skillful means, wisdom, and a partial understanding of the selflessness of persons, we refrain from certain negative actions and gradually begin to practice virtues such as the 10 virtuous actions. These precepts then become a cause for rebirth in the higher realms. If we keep the monastic precepts or the vows of personal liberation truly embraced by wisdom, they become a cause for liberation, that is, a cause for the hearers and solitary realizers. If these actions are engaged while sustaining great method and prajna, that becomes the cause for unsurpassed awakening. When our actions are guided by bodhicitta and the view of emptiness, they become the practice of the bodhisattva vows. They then become causes for progressing through the 10 bodhisattva grounds and attaining unsurpassed awakening. And if one acts while sustaining the very greatest method and prajna, that becomes a cause for the effortless, spontaneously present great awakening. In Mantrayana, one practices with the view of primordial purity and primordial evenness, guided by wisdom and skillful means, together with practices unique to Mantrayana, such as the generation stage and completion stage. When one acts under the guidance of these views and practices, the result is unlike those mentioned earlier. In this very life, it can effortlessly and spontaneously become a cause for great awakening. Therefore, this manner of transformation is superior to the lower vehicles by virtue of its unmistaken purity. So, when we explain the mantra vows this way, in fact they are indeed very hard to maintain, but when the mantra vows are pure, the lower vows are certainly pure as well. For someone whose mantra practice is excellent and whose discipline is pure, for him the vows of personal liberation and the bodhisattva vows will certainly be pure. There is no question about it. If a person cannot even keep the lower vows of personal liberation, then keeping the very pure discipline of mantra is quite difficult. Because if you cannot even manage the basics, then the higher vows are very difficult. Next, he also gives an analogy. In brief, as with adultery, Ordinary people will be motivated by the desire for the bliss derived from sexual contact, by the mind fixating upon the pleasure that occurs during the emission of the climactic activity. When the act is complete, the seed of desire is sown in the mind, which brings about further obsession. As for adultery, an ordinary person, in fact, what is his initial motive? It is to gain a worldly contaminated bliss derived from sexual contact. His initial motive is the motive of sexual contact between one person and another. Then, in the act itself, he fixates on the pleasure of emission. Between two people, the bliss of ordinary sensory and bodily friction, that is his aim. And in the end, it sows a seed of desire. Because he fixates on it as truly real, he sows a seed of desire upon the alaya. Finally, as the grasping at desire ripens more and more, it becomes a cause for ceaseless wandering through the three realms of samsara. So as for adultery, in terms of its own basic nature, for an ordinary person, one should say there is no quality or virtue in it. But for a true yogi who holds the view of the indivisibility of purity and evenness, his motive, his conduct, and the final result are entirely different. Is there such conduct within mantra? There indeed is. But this conduct is not what worldly people speak of or perceive. It is entirely different. Mantra practitioners will initially give rise to a motivation that causes great merit, such as being inspired toward taintless exaltation. As a yogi, if there is some conduct of union, his purpose is not to gain a temporary bliss of desire by means of the body. That is not it at all. It is uncontaminated wisdom, taintless great bliss. As you all know, the treasury of Abhidharma also says it is a great bliss, with no grasping whatsoever in terms of desire, anger, or delusion. Such practice must be grounded in great bliss and a vast motivation. Because the goal he seeks to accomplish is so great, it requires both a vast motivation and great merit as its foundation. The actual act will have the strength to be blessed by the mudra of enlightened body, speech, and mind. Moreover, body, speech, and mind here are not the ordinary actions between people. Relying on such supports as the Yidam deities in union, the lotus and the vajra, the wisdom of undefiled great bliss arises through the blessing power of the mudras of enlightened body, speech, and mind, with the power of the Upadesha method for binding the wind-mind within the central channel, and all the impure winds and mind enter completely into the central channel. By the power of this pith instruction, and with the potential of prajna that emphasizes wisdom, ordinary passions and bliss will arise as wisdom. Through these two pith instructions, one being the wind mind entering the central channel, and the other being the manifestation of primordial wisdom. After that, all ordinary dualistic thoughts of subject and object dissolve into basic space, and wisdom becomes manifest. When the act is complete, the ordinary mind's collection of habits, similar to a dense thicket, will be incinerated by the fire of wisdom. Finally, once his fire of wisdom blazes, it burns away all the impure habitual tendencies of subject and object completely. So is there such conduct within mantra? There is such conduct, but this conduct is not driven by ordinary worldly desire, by ordinary perceptions of male and female, or by afflictions in their usual form. If any of these were present, it could not be considered a skillful path of mantrayana. So why do I say this? Because I mentioned a while ago as well that many who study mantra must never use union and the like as an excuse. Otherwise, in the name of mantra, you may create very grave misdeeds for yourself, because anyone with even a little wisdom understands clearly that the conduct described within mantra is in no way the afflictions in their own characteristics within an ordinary being's mind stream. Not even the slightest trace of ordinary affliction is present. In particular, this is permissible only when one has personally developed skillful means and wisdom and acts from a complete realization of the view of the indivisibility of purity and evenness. But from ancient times to the present day, people in Tibetan area have always known who the true yogis are. They are widely recognized and accepted as such. The same was true of His Holiness Jigme Phuntsok Rinpoche. As described in his biography, although he possessed such realization and ability in practice, for the sake of spreading the Dharma, He was especially careful in his conduct, as everyone knows. Through his pure conduct, he set an example of how to spread the teachings and benefit beings. So I hope that, in the future, the Buddhist Academy will continue to uphold these broad principles: pure discipline and the correct view, pure conduct and a pure commitment to benefiting others. If your karma comes to fruition, for example, if you were once a monastic but eventually your karma fully ripens, there are, after all, many people in the world who return to lay life. In that case, simply live as a lay person. There were many such cases even during the time of Shakyamuni Buddha, and many more after his parinirvana. There is no need at all to use mantra as an excuse. Don't bring harm to mantra. There is no need for that. So, for the individual, there is no benefit in it whatsoever. Therefore, once you have looked at these principles, if some desire arises in your mind, and you then dress up that desire in the terminology of the secret mantra, there is immeasurable fault in that. Other tantras and pith instructions also teach this at great length. So all of us, at first, some of us truly do not understand, especially those with heavy afflictions. You originally came to Tibetan area to study the secret mantra in order to cut through afflictions. But if you fail to do so and, unable to find any other excuse or justification, you turn to other forms of conduct merely to satisfy yourself, that shows that you are practicing the Dharma in a completely distorted way. Practicing in such a distorted way brings immeasurable harm and is entirely unnecessary, so you must be careful about this. This proves that the conduct of mantra is supremely sublime. This applies to the other passions as well. The others, such as anger and jealousy, the afflictions and the non-virtuous deeds, can all be understood in the same way. So all perfectly pure conduct occurs through the power of wisdom. We all know that pure conduct first requires a power of wisdom. Wisdom itself originates from the perfectly correct view. And from what does wisdom arise? Wisdom arises from the view of evenness and purity we spoke of earlier, or the nature of the perfectly correct view. This wisdom just mentioned is said to arise from the perfectly correct view, or rather, the very nature of purity and evenness is this wisdom. One must understand that the life essence of Samaya is maintained through this view. From this, we can understand that the most fundamental basis of Mantrayana Samaya and discipline is the Mantrayana view. All of us here must understand that the most fundamental point of the Mantrayana Samaya is not to abandon the unsurpassed. If you did not fully understand the earlier explanation the first time, go over it repeatedly and ask your tutors to explain it again. For many who enter mantra and cannot accomplish it, what is the root cause? It is that we are like a construction project where the later maintenance cannot keep up. Even though the machine is fine, if you cannot operate it, there is nothing to be done. By the way, it is as if I bought a very good computer today but cannot use it and quickly spill water on it. Even though the quality is good, all at once no one can use it. So the empowerments and pith instructions of mantra are very sublime. But the crucial thing is this: if our samaya is broken along the way, for the view of the indivisibility of purity and evenness is the most fundamental thing, then once you abandon this route, whether practicing the deity or reciting mantra, any of these activities all require this view. And at that point, if you lack this link, none of the rest can work. So why is it that many people today cannot accomplish mantra? In fact, the main reason is that you haven't understood the view. If one doesn't understand the view, one cannot keep the samaya either. And if one doesn't keep the samaya, then all the other links come loose and nothing can be done. In the Magnificent Wisdom Lightning it states, thus, what is referred to as samaya is said to be one's own view. So, in Mantrayana, the view is the very foundation of samaya. If we realize the view of the indivisibility of purity and evenness and sustain it over time without allowing it to deteriorate, then our samaya will remain intact. Maintaining it is very important. Take a computer, for example. Many people do not take good care of it. They use it and then leave it alone. As for me, I don't use it much. I have had one since 2006 or maybe 2005. And the other day, some people said, oh, you still use a computer like this? I said, it is fine. I don't use it much, but I do take good care of it. So you should know the views of mantra. Once I have received empowerment, I must uphold the view of indivisibility, of purity and evenness. No matter what practice I do or what action I perform, I must never abandon this. Once I abandon it, I have no way forward in this world of mantra. In that case, I would first fall into hell in my next life, and what happens after that is another matter. Of course, if you do not believe in cause and effect, that is a different matter. But if you do believe in cause and effect, this is indeed an objective law. Next, he explains the purpose, the general explanation, and the specific explanation of the 7 qualities. What is the purpose of keeping the mantra Samaya? First, the general purpose. The Samayas are just like a wish-fulfilling jewel, the source that fulfills all needs. With a wish-fulfilling jewel, whatever you wish for, you obtain. Samaya is the same. If one keeps the mantra Samaya purely, you can accomplish the deity, you can accomplish enlightened activity, you can accomplish the mudra. So Samaya is like a wish-fulfilling jewel. A wish-fulfilling jewel is the source of all that is needed, as well as the life essence of all principal virtues. It is like the life essence of all roots of virtue. If the life essence of Samaya is gone, then no other root of virtue can survive. Whoever transgresses them will be like a damaged vessel that can no longer hold the essence, since all mantra accomplishments will therefore be wasted. If Samaya is completely broken, it is like a container breaking apart. Everything inside spills out. All the states of the mantra view, meditation, conduct, and result are gone. Samayas are like the ground supporting all qualities. Just as nothing in the world could exist without the earth, Samaya is just as important in mantrayana. Consider the vows of the lesser vehicle. A monastic, for example, relies on the monastic precepts to obtain all the qualities. The bodhisattva vehicle relies on the bodhisattva precepts to attain all the qualities of benefiting others. The mantra vows are the same. Even if you cannot keep the countless branch precepts, you must take the 5 fundamental root vows very seriously. If you do not take your own practice seriously at all, then there is really nothing anyone can do. But if you truly want to value your own practice, then you must indeed value this. In order to accomplish the Dharma kingdom of all the great noble ones, keeping Samaya is an indispensable foundation. If you want to truly attain the Dharma kingdom of great accomplishment, or to become a greatly accomplished Vidyadhara, if you are to truly become a Mahasiddha in the future, then these Samayas are indispensable. They are very important. Next, he gives the specific explanation of the 7 qualities. We will explain them one by one below. If one possesses such samayas of mantra, immeasurable, sublime, surpassing qualities will be attained. If we possess such samaya, then these immeasurable, boundless, surpassing qualities will be attained naturally. That is why, for instance, according to the general vehicle, that which is called view, conduct, and support describes the 3 trainings of prajna, samadhi, and discipline. Generally, in the common sutra vehicle, there are also view, conduct, and the support of view and conduct. In fact, the view is called the training in wisdom, the conduct, the training in samadhi, and their support is discipline. We often talk about wisdom and samadhi. If you really want them to succeed, you must uphold discipline. Discipline is the root of samadhi and also the root of wisdom. Without discipline, the mind generally cannot settle. Those who break discipline or who do not value it cannot settle their minds either. For those who do not value discipline, their wisdom will not be genuine either. In Tibetan region, there was once a Khenpo named Naiden. Khenpo Naiden often told his disciples, when your discipline is pure, your wisdom will also be sublime, because the mind is focused on it, so the mind generally doesn't become distracted. If your discipline is very pure, then your samadhi will settle. It is much the same today. Some people whose discipline is not pure seem to spend all day talking about other people, and as a result, their minds can never settle. Nor can they make proper use of their own wisdom. I have seen this myself when visiting universities. Some students during their years at university studied with single-minded focus and achieved very good results. Others during their time at university often engaged in much improper behavior. At that point, even though such a student was originally very clever, his intelligence suddenly dropped off. That is how it is. This is even more true for monastics. When their discipline and minds are pure, meditative concentration can develop, and their wisdom will grow day by day. For those who take exams regularly, if their understanding improves year by year, it shows that their minds are focused on study and reflection. But if their minds are not focused on study and reflection, their grades may be fine for the first year or two, but then suddenly begin to decline. I can often see this clearly in the oral Dharma presentation classes. Those with relatively pure discipline and focused minds tend to remain steady, while those whose minds are not pure may improve for a while and then fall behind again. They come one day, miss the next, return the day after, and then miss another few days. When they do not attend, it may be because their minds are unsettled and they are struggling with suffering and afflictions. Even for that discipline, the higher are more sublime than the lower. In fact, the higher are more sublime than the lower. This is in terms of the common vehicle. In terms of the three trainings of discipline, samadhi, and wisdom, the higher are more sublime than the lower. Although there are immeasurable ways in which the bodhisattva vows surpass those of personal liberation, if synthesized, the great vehicle is more sublime in 7 ways, such as greatness of intention and so forth. For instance, between the great and lesser vehicles, the great vehicle surpasses the lesser in 7 greatnesses: greatness of intention, greatness of practice, greatness of wisdom, greatness of method, 7 in all. Take the greatness of practice, for example. One practices with a focus on both oneself and others. As for greatness of wisdom, one realizes the selflessness of persons and the selflessness of phenomena. And as for greatness of diligence, there are the 3 countless eons. This was explained before in the ornament of the sutras and in finding comfort and ease in the nature of mind. Generally, the great vehicle surpasses the lesser vehicle through these 7 greatnesses, and the vows that support this are likewise more sublime. The same applies to discipline. The bodhisattva vows of the Mahayana are more profound than the pratimoksha vows of the lesser vehicle. From the perspective of being profoundly vast, accomplishing the 2 aims, and not contradicting twofold selflessness and so forth, in fact, the qualities of this are inconceivable. So, from the great vehicle's aspects of profundity and vastness, benefiting others, and the twofold selflessness, there are very many ways in which it surpasses the lesser vehicle. Furthermore, compared with the bodhisattva vows, the samayas of mantra surpass them in profoundly vast qualities beyond all measure. Likewise, if we compare the mantra discipline with the bodhisattva vows, then just as with the comparison of the lesser vehicle and the bodhisattva vows just now, there are likewise very many ways the mantra discipline surpasses them. For now, in summary, there are 7, just as the root Tantra states. Furthermore, the supreme victor Kuntuzangpo, and so on, as appears in the verse. What follows is probably the 7 ways of surpassing. The 7 ways of surpassing, the 7 qualities we will explain below. We can speak of 7 qualities in which the mantrayana vows surpass the bodhisattva vows of the sutrayana. In other words, the mantrayana vows themselves have 7 superior features not found in the other vows. Let us look at what these are and how taking the mantrayana vows differs completely from taking the bodhisattva and pratimoksha vows. Below he draws the comparison in 7 respects. First, sealed by the mudra of Kuntuzangpo, the unsought qualities are spontaneously present. Because one possesses the mantra vows, because one is sealed by the mudra of Kuntuzangpo, these qualities are not deliberately sought, yet they are spontaneously accomplished. This is mainly what he is explaining here. So what does it mean to be sealed by the mudra of Samantabhadra? Below, let us look at how this works. Those who are hearers are born from the speech of the Buddha. So since they are not of the Buddha family, not being sealed by the mudra of Buddha himself means being sealed only by the mudra of blessing. Within the lesser vehicle, the best are the hearers and the solitary realizers. The sutras say that the hearers and solitary realizers attain accomplishment by listening to the speech of the Buddha, unlike the great vehicle, which is of the Buddha family. So they have not received the Buddha's own seal because they are not even of the family. They are not blessed by the Buddha in person, but are sustained only by the blessing of his words. So practitioners of the lesser vehicle are not blessed by the Buddha in person. One can put it that way. Since bodhisattvas belong to the family of the Buddha, although sealed by the Buddha himself, they still believe Buddhahood is yet to be accomplished, so they are not sealed by the mudra of spontaneous presence. As bodhisattvas, they are somewhat more sublime than the lesser vehicle. Because they truly possess bodhicitta, they are of the Buddha family. Precisely because of this, they received the blessing of the Buddha's own wisdom. Because the Buddha family is just such a wisdom of benefiting others, the Buddha's own blessing is already present. They will attain Buddhahood only in the future. They have not yet recognized the nature of their own minds. Therefore, they have not received the Buddha's immediate and spontaneously present blessing. For bodhisattvas, Buddhahood is something to be attained in the future. It is gradually realized after accumulating merit over 3 countless eons. They have not yet recognized in the present moment that their own true nature is Buddha. They do not yet have this recognition. In unsurpassed mantra, since phenomena abide in the mandala of enlightened body, speech, and mind in the manner of nothing that is not fully awakened already. Within mantra, no matter what kind of secret mantra practitioner you are, in fact, as long as you understand it in terms of the view, then body, speech, and mind all abide within the mandala of the Tathagata. This is therefore called being sealed by the mudra of Kuntuzangpo. So we often say we share the same fortune as the Tathagata Kuntuzangpo, that we attain a fruition equal to the Tathagata Kuntuzangpo, and so on. So if we now, in this very moment, recognize the nature of mind, we directly accord with the true wisdom intent of the Tathagata Kuntuzangpo. So, in a certain sense, this surpasses the Bodhisattva vehicle and surpasses the hearer vehicle, because none of them has received the Buddha's own blessing of mind. But if we truly recognize this essence of the indivisibility of purity and evenness, the Tathagata Kuntuzangpo himself already blesses us. That being so, all great resultant qualities are spontaneously present. All the vast qualities of Buddhahood can manifest immediately without effort. This is the first point. Perhaps later, when he explains it, because it is inconceivable, it is fine not to set this up as a separate topic heading. We will look at this again shortly. Second, the way the strength of blessings for mantra practitioners is sublime based on how the principal worldly gods and their retinues see them as objects of respect is explained in the following way. For one who practices mantra, in fact, many lords and retinues in the world all show respect, and so his power is quite sublime. For a mantra practitioner, many dharma protectors and worldly gods prostrate to him every day, so when some people prostrate, that is fine too. Today, a few monastics prostrated to me. Normally, I do not accept their prostrations, but then I thought, in Mantrayana, we are taught that anything can be an object of prostration. I had also placed a few scriptures in front of me, so I visualized them prostrating to the scriptures instead. I told them not to prostrate, but they insisted, so I let them prostrate. I simply closed my eyes and let them be. They said they had come from Qinghai. Although Brahma, Indra, and others respect the hearers, this is not the same as the way they respect the bodhisattvas. Although bodhisattvas are respected, it is unlike Buddhas, since Buddhas receive the greatest respect of all. In the world, the Buddha is the ultimate object of offering. The hearer arhats, for instance, receive offerings from the worldly gods, but not the way people revere bodhisattvas like Manjushri and Avalokiteshvara. Although bodhisattvas on the bhumis are honored by many gods, nagas and yakshas, as well as by humans and non-human beings who pay homage and prostrate to them, they are still not revered in the same way as a Buddha. It is like some of our Dharma friends. A tutor receives a little respect, but not as much as a Dharma teacher. People respect a Dharma teacher, but still not as much as a Dharma king. So people still look at your status and at your various aspects, and their attitude of respect toward you differs completely. Look at how differently we respond when different people arrive. When the first person comes, you may simply give a slight nod. When someone else arrives, you may rise slightly from your seat. When another person comes, you may stand up and greet them respectfully. So people's attitudes differ toward different people. When a hearer comes, we give him a greeting. Then when a bodhisattva comes, everyone stands up. When the Buddha comes, not only does everyone stand, they all begin to prostrate to him. So there are different levels of respect. In addition, respect shown for those who possess vows and practice is similar according to the stages of categories just mentioned. The same applies here. Those regarded as Shravakas, as well as those who uphold the precepts, may receive a certain degree of respect, though this is not always the case. Take practitioners of the Shravakayana, for example. When Theravada monastics visit, people show them respect. When monastics from the Mahayana Sutra tradition visit, they are also shown respect. When masters of Mantrayana visit, why are they shown even greater respect? Because they uphold the Vidyadhara vows. Therefore, people show them even greater respect and make more offerings to them. I think that comparison works quite well. Therefore, all the great worldly gods, their retinues, the Dakinis and the Dharma protectors, will heed those who have entered the domain of the Buddhas and hold the mantra Samayas as though they were the Buddha, and cherish them as their crowning jewels, and by the power of their wholehearted help, these mantra practitioners come to possess miraculous strength. So there is still a difference here. It depends on the path one follows. Those who follow the path of the lesser vehicle are respected as Shravakas, but not to the same degree as Mahayana Bodhisattvas. People respect those who keep the great vehicle Bodhisattva vows too, but not as much as the Buddha. But for those who enter the mantra vows, that is, those who hold the Samaya of the mantra vows, all the great worldly gods and Dakinis in the world, the gods, Nagas, Yakshas, humans and non-humans, all respect them greatly. Some practitioners of the Sutrayana may not be used to hearing this, but the power of Mantrayana is indeed very great. I can feel this myself, whether in the Chinese Han regions or in the West, wherever I go, many people can feel it as well. The other day, we were at a university in the West. It may even have been recorded. I asked many people there, what do you think of Tibetan Mantrayana Buddhism? Many of them said that the mantras and practices of the secret mantra have tremendous power. Compared with other Buddhist teachings, they felt it gave them a greater sense of security and made them especially eager to practice. These were some of their views. They were engaging entirely as scholars on an academic level. This makes me wonder why, in the Chinese Han regions and elsewhere, more and more people are studying Mantrayana. Even some respected masters of the Sutrayana seem to feel that everyone is turning to Mantrayana, and they appear somewhat unhappy about it. Perhaps they too sense that the Mantrayana view is indeed very direct. This is not a matter of praising ourselves and putting others down. As we gradually compare the teachings through scripture and reasoning, this becomes clear. Therefore, including some worldly gods, nagas and yakshas, many dharma protectors toward those who spread mantra, do help them a great deal, protecting them and guarding them. So I hope that we do not become arrogant, saying our mantra is such and such. When I go out, I have never thought this way. But we also know that if one practices mantra, there are indeed many, including gods, nagas, yakshas, dharma protectors and earth gods who will protect you, and this protection is indeed very powerful. This is especially so in the age of degeneration. Then this power, the power of the Dharma, is indeed very evident. He explains this very clearly here. There is a good reason for this. You should all take some time to think about it. Third, given that the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas consider mantra practitioners to be their heirs or relatives, the way in which their blessings swiftly emerge is as follows. Those who possess the mantra vows are blessed as if they were their own children or their own brothers. Just as it is certain that the authentic son of a Chakravartin ruler will one day rule the kingdom, the son of a Chakravartin who bears the marks when he is crowned prince will, step by step, surely come to the throne. The Vidyadharas, whose minds are one with the wisdom intent of the Buddha himself. As for us who study the secret mantra and possess the vows, the Vidyadhara here, that is, one who studies mantra can also be called this in terms of the name. Just as one who holds the bodhisattva vows is called a bodhisattva, so one who holds the mantra vows can be called a vidyadhara. Those who hold the mantrayana vows follow the Buddha's enlightened intent and conduct will be fully acknowledged and referred to as the heritage of the Tathagatas. The Buddhas and bodhisattvas constantly keep them in mind, regarding them as the heirs of the Tathagatas and bodhisattvas. Just as an image is reflected on a clear pool of water, the Buddha's blessings will swiftly enter the mind streams of those with pure view and meditation combined with the potency of Samaya. Just as in clear water, the moon's reflection quickly appears, by the same logic, one who possesses the mantra view of the indivisibility of purity and evenness, who possesses the pure discipline and pure samaya of mantra, such a person can receive the transmission into their mind stream. Shakyamuni Buddha, the Tathagata Kuntuzampo, and those of the lineage, the blessings of all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas come easily into your mind. Because for one who studies mantra, his view is indeed very close to and very direct with the conduct and wisdom intent of the Buddha, the Tathagata. For this reason, if a person has the view of the indivisibility of purity and evenness and keeps the mantra vows, then all the Buddhas regard you as a child of the Buddhas, and all the Bodhisattvas regard you as their own brother. At such a time, the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas also constantly keep you in mind. So it is very important for us to uphold the Mantrayana vows and maintain the Mantrayana view throughout our lives. You should all make the aspiration not to simply follow what others say or keep changing your minds throughout your lives. As for me, when it comes to the view, I cannot say for sure what would happen if something like the Cultural Revolution occurred again. If I were put in prison, it would be hard to say whether I could remain firm. That is hard to know because ordinary beings are affected by what they experience. But unless something like that happens, I am certain that my view will not change in this lifetime. No external circumstance will change it. It is deeply rooted and unshakable. I can say that with confidence. I hope that many of you will first strengthen your view through study and reflection, while also keeping your discipline as pure as possible. Even if you cannot attend teachings and engage in study and reflection every day, as long as you serve the Sangha and do something meaningful each day, I think there should be no problem. Whether you are sweeping the floor, making steam buns, driving, or cleaning the toilets, if you do it while maintaining the view of the indivisibility of purity and evenness, the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas will always keep you in mind, and you will have no difficulty. Fourth, since the practitioner's field of experience is in harmony with the Tathagata himself, the way that this is sublime is as follows. His field of experience is the same as the Tathagata's, so it differs from the field of experience of the lesser vehicle and the rest. Since a mantra practitioner will not lose the continuity of the deeds of the Buddha while abiding in the meaning of original purity and evenness, free from acceptance and rejection, this way of abiding is in harmony with the domain of the Tathagatas. A Mantrayana practitioner generally rests in the view that there is nothing to accept or reject, and that purity and evenness are indivisible, because, as we said earlier, the indivisibility of purity and evenness is the view of the Buddha. So if we rest within such a view and act accordingly, then the deeds of the Tathagata and the conduct of the Tathagata are just like this. Upholders of the other two vows are not like this, because they are followers of the Aryas and ground-level Bodhisattvas. If you take the vows of the lesser vehicle, you follow the Arhats and learn from them. If you take the Bodhisattva vows, you follow the Bodhisattvas and learn from them. You don't follow the Buddha and learn from him, but we follow the Buddha and learn from him. So if we are going to aim high, we still build a connection with the highest leader. So many people are unwilling to go through each level one by one. They often bypass their immediate supervisors and go straight to the person at the top. Take people serving the Sangha here, for example. They may refuse to follow the person directly in charge of them and come straight to me, saying, "Please approve this and sign it for me." These days, I am very careful about giving approval or signing anything. If I were to sign or approve it, they might be trying to undermine the supervisor below them. They may say, "Look, Khenpo has already signed it, so what can you say? Are you higher or is the Khenpo higher?" That leaves the supervisor in a very awkward position with no real way to respond. They may not agree with it, but once I have signed it, there is not much they can do. Which is why the field of experience of the mantra Samaya is sublime. So if our view, meditation, conduct, and result are the same as the Buddha's, then it surpasses the other bodhisattva vows and vows of personal liberation. This is the fourth. Fifth, since phenomena are seen as the pure land of Kuntuzangpo, the way that all fear and anxiety diminish is as follows. For someone who upholds the Mantrayana Samaya, the practice itself is the pure realm of Kuntuzangpo, so there is nothing to fear. The phenomena of samsara originally abide as great purity and evenness, so being without anything to accept or reject. Samsara, as we determined earlier in the section on the view, originally abides as the indivisibility of purity and evenness, with nothing to accept or reject, and this is the Pure Land of Kuntuzangpo. The mind that realizes this abides without the torment of the afflictions and suffering and without the fear of falling away from the path. He has none of it, because he has realized that all phenomena originally abide in purity and evenness. With such a view, he neither fears the suffering of samsara nor fears falling away from the path. For example, when being carried away by a river in a dream, those who recognize the experience as a dream will have no fear and will know that if they awaken, the nightmare will cease, and so seek every means to wake up from it. When you are being swept away by a river in a dream, you first realize you are dreaming, and once you realize it, you seek every means to wake up from the dream. All such fear vanishes completely, and then you seek a way to wake up from the dream. Likewise, free from seeing samsara and enlightenment as the place to abandon and the antidote, there will be no attempt to practice the path of rejecting afflictions. If we truly know that samsara and nirvana are non-dual, and that the afflictions and wisdom are also non-dual, we will not, like the lesser vehicle, strive desperately at cutting through the afflictions, but rather abide while sustaining the supreme prajna that knows the intrinsic nature of the afflictions and so forth, without allowing great mindfulness to decline. When we know that the afflictions are awakening and rest within their essence, this is the very best skillful method. Indeed, for one of sharp faculties it truly is. This great mindfulness and great wisdom that holds it is profoundly important. At such times there is truly nothing for us to fear. In fact, if you truly understand some of the key instructions of Mantrayana, you can accumulate boundless merit in a very short time, and your fear of samsara can also disappear right away. Just as there is no fear of samsara in future lives, there is no need to fear afflictions in the present. Practitioners of the lesser vehicle are generally very afraid of them. When desire or anger arises in their minds, they become very concerned. But once you understand this key instruction, when an affliction actually arises, the moment you recognize its nature, its harmful power disappears. It is like poison turning into medicine, so there is no need to deliberately reject it. Once its nature is transformed and recognized, that is how it works, so there is no fear. An ordinary practitioner of the lesser vehicle may become very afraid when even a slight affliction, suffering, or difficulty arises. But in Mantrayana, if a practitioner has some understanding of the view, then no matter what situation they are in or whom they meet, they can handle it without giving rise to ordinary afflictions. That is what this means. Sixth, the way whatever vows have been taught according to the conventional and definitive meanings as perfectly pure and subsumed within the nature of spontaneous presence has already been shown. Whatever is of conventional and definitive meanings, all of these, the vows of personal liberation and the bodhisattva vows, are all subsumed within the mantra vows. He does not explain this sixth topic at length here. Seventh, even if samayas decline, they can be restored through the method of fulfillment as follows. The seventh speaks of this sublime feature of the mantra vows. Since all hearers mainly emphasize fixation upon material phenomena and the activities of body and speech, generally the hearer vehicle emphasizes the precepts of body and speech. If one violates those of body and speech, there is no way to restore them. It is generally rare to break the precepts by mind alone. If their vows are damaged, then like a shattered clay pot, there is no way to restore them. Within the vows of personal liberation, once the vows have been completely broken, it is very rare to take them again and restore them. Within the Shravakayana tradition, this is very difficult. That is how it is in the Shravakayana. The bodhisattvas do not materialize phenomena, so by emphasizing the mind, because the bodhisattva vows rely chiefly on the mind, they do not place much emphasis on body or speech. Relying upon a spiritual guide, all degenerations can be completely restored and made stronger than before. By confessing in reliance on a spiritual guide, and by relying on a spiritual guide who confers the vows again, they can become even purer. Just as if a gold pot has become damaged, it is possible for a skillful blacksmith to restore it and make it even more magnificent than its former state. Through his skill, the gold vessel that was damaged can be restored anew, made even more magnificent. This is the analogy of the gold vessel given for the bodhisattva vows. In mantra, it is asserted that great purity and evenness are realized, and the manifestation of the magical nature is mastered with awareness. Moreover, you have realized that in true reality there is the indivisibility of purity and evenness, and in appearance you know everything to be a marvelous expression of awareness, an illusion mastered by awareness, all of it dreamlike and illusory, within such a display. So if the Samaya is broken, even without relying on someone to restore degenerations, it is possible to restore them through one's strength alone. Most cases are like this. Of the 14 root vows, one can restore many by one's own power. Of course, a few require confession before the guru, and perhaps a few need some outer help to recover, but one can restore most by one's own power. Just as if a gold or silver pot is dented, it is possible to repair it by oneself without the help of a blacksmith. When a gold vessel has a slight dent, you can restore it through your own craft, just the same. So if the Mantrayana vows are broken, they can be restored relatively easily. Of course, they must be restored within the required time limit. Just as is taught in commentary on ascertainment of the 3 types of vows, if 3 years pass, then there is no way to restore it. If the guru accepts such a disciple, both guru and disciple will fall into Vajra hell. So generally, if the Mantrayana vows are broken but the time limit has not yet passed, they can be purified right away through confession within the required time. But if the time limit has passed, we need to consider the different ways of breaking the vows mentioned earlier. Among these, the situation becomes especially serious once more than 3 years have passed. Then both guru and disciple will be consumed by the consequences. It is extremely dangerous. So His Holiness Jigme Pansok Rinpoche also said before, never break the mantra vows. Even if you do break them, then within a very short time, for example, between one Vajra friend and another, if something has gone wrong, it is best to confess thoroughly. In fact, some people today, when there is something to confess between Vajra friends, seem to think it is the monastic steward's responsibility, or the Dharma teacher's responsibility, or the responsibility of those in charge. But for those in charge, no matter how serious the conflict between you may be, it does not create any obstacle for them. For you personally, however, if you truly do not believe in cause and effect, then there is nothing more to say. But if you do believe in cause and effect, you will remain Vajra friends until you attain enlightenment. So it is best not to allow this kind of break in Samaya to occur. Breaking Samaya means thinking, from now on, even if I have the slightest opportunity to help this person, I will not help them. Instead, I will harm them. Vajra friends should never harbor such malicious intentions toward one another. Otherwise, breaking the Mantrayana vows is truly very serious. Even if something like this does happen, ordinary beings may lose control in the heat of anger and make malicious wishes, say hurtful things, or even act on them. Now, while we are transmitting the secret mantra, I hear that some Vajra friends have started hitting each other with floor brooms. In fact, hitting each other with brooms is also a very cowardly act. If so, it is truly pitiful, because some treat the teachings of mantra as nothing. Perhaps because of how some of you were educated from childhood, you do not regard mantra as the most important conduct in your life. If you regarded it as the most important conduct, you would not so casually treat it as nothing. You would not act this way, because it directly concerns the causes of your own happiness and suffering. But if we are only putting on a show on the surface, then whether you get along with others or not, it may not matter much. It is like a person in a company who wants to keep his place there. If he offends the most important leader there, he may have no chance of surviving there at all. This person must show great respect for such an important figure. Even when that leader treats him very badly, he must think, for my own sake, I must never offend him. If I ever offend this person, I will have nowhere to turn. I will be in a terrible situation. So they take the relationship very seriously. If we have this same attitude toward our Vajra friends and Vajra masters, and even in our relationships with all beings, the vows in our mind stream will remain very pure. Otherwise, if we fail to accomplish certain Mantrayana practices, we should not blame anything else. The problem may lie with how we have kept the vows in our own mind stream. It is like failing to take proper care of a computer until it becomes covered in dust. When it eventually stops working, you blame everyone and everything, but the real problem may simply be that you did not take proper care of it. Samaya is the same. Just like anything else, it needs to be carefully maintained. This is how the seven qualities are possessed, which can be limitlessly expanded upon. The first quality is the inconceivable samaya of the unimaginable nature of phenomena, so this quality of it is in fact an inconceivable samaya of the inconceivable nature of phenomena. It is fine not to set it up as a separate one. If it is inconceivable, how could one set it up as a single item? Because it is guided by the enlightened intent of Kuntuzangpo, it is an inconceivable state, so there is no need to establish it separately. The fourth and fifth qualities, that is, the field of experience of the Tathagata and so on, can be subsumed as one based on the distinction of the nature and its function. Alternatively, these qualities can be subsumed into five categories. If the fourth and fifth are combined and the first is not counted separately, then there are five qualities in total. So the qualities of Mantrayana Samaya can also be presented as five in all. You should all understand that keeping the mantra vows is very important. For those of us who study Mantrayana, it is not enough merely to say that Mantrayana is wonderful. In certain ways, we should become closer to the Tathagata. If we have strength and the ability to spread the Dharma and benefit beings, this should be something real, not just something we say. This is how I see it. When I study and teach Mantrayana, my approach may be somewhat different from when I teach the Sutrayana. Although I don't have time to read many books or prepare as thoroughly as I would for a Sutrayana class. After all, over the course of many years, my faith, the way I speak, and even the way I think have all been shaped by this kind of environment. Until the day I leave this conditioned body behind, I believe I will spend the rest of my life with this same conviction. So at times I feel that I possess a distinctive kind of strength, which I believe comes from the blessings of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas of Mantrayana, as well as from its view and conduct and the blessings of the Dharma protectors. No matter who tries to change this, they will certainly be unable to do so. This is true for me personally, and I hope it will also be true for many of you who practice Mantrayana. Simply wearing red robes does not make someone a Mantrayana practitioner. Many people assume that if you wear red robes, you must practice Tibetan Buddhism. But look at laywomen today. Many of them also wear red, yet that doesn't necessarily make them Tibetan Buddhist practitioners. Likewise, among those who don't wear red, many don't believe in Buddhism at all. So we cannot determine whether someone practices Tibetan Buddhism simply by their clothing. But if we truly hold the view of the indivisibility of purity and evenness, and if our conduct and meditation at every moment are infused with the view and conduct of Mantrayana, then, in many respects, we should have a strong ability to spread the Dharma and benefit beings. Indeed, Mantrayana practitioners today are making a significant contribution to the spread of Buddhism worldwide. In short, Samaya means not to transgress, to remain unmoved within the meaning of the view. Within the view of the indivisibility of purity and evenness, the true Samaya does not transgress. What does it not transgress? It is, as we said earlier, remaining unmoved within the view of not forsaking the unsurpassed. To abide within the mandala, to maintain the meaning of empowerment in the mind stream, and not to forsake meditation, whether abiding within the mandala or maintaining the meaning of empowerment in the mind stream, and also not transgressing the practice we spoke of earlier. Conduct, accomplishment, offerings, activity, mantra, and mudra, this is Samaya. In fact, if we do not violate Samaya or depart from the view of the indivisibility of purity and evenness, then all the other aspects of Mantrayana are included within these. To put a stop to everything that runs counter to these. This means avoiding everything contrary to the proper view, conduct, and practice of offering. As mentioned earlier, Samaya means not transgressing. What then must we not transgress? We must refrain from everything contrary to the view, meditation, and conduct. This is the Samaya of cessation or guarding. Here there are samayas to be cultivated and samayas to be guarded. As for the samayas to be cultivated, practicing them and abiding in this state is known as observing and cultivating samaya. The samayas to be guarded are those that require us to prevent such defilements from arising in our mind stream. These are known as the samayas to be guarded. It pervades everything. This Samaya, in fact, pervades all the tantric matters spoken of above. It is the essence that abides without transgressing the path of mantra. It is the nature of the deity. In fact, not transgressing Samaya means abiding in the indivisibility of purity and evenness. This is Samaya. In other words, it means abiding as the deity. The ultimate deity is precisely this state of the indivisibility of purity and evenness. It is the nature of Vajra mantra. Whether we recite mantra or visualize, all of it requires this kind of view. Reciting within the view of the indivisibility of purity and evenness, meditating within that view, walking within the view of the indivisibility of purity and evenness. I have heard that many Dharma friends even use the indivisibility of purity and evenness as their Dharma name. That is fine too, whether you embody its meaning or simply use it as a name. One must know that, in the ultimate sense, since phenomena primordially abide as great purity and evenness, one must know that everything is free from negation, proof, acceptance, and rejection. This is the great perfection. Ultimately, everything comes down to the great perfection. From the ultimate perspective of the great perfection, all phenomena have always abided in primordial purity and primordial evenness, and are therefore beyond all acceptance and rejection. None of the distinctions of acceptance and rejection discussed earlier remain. Within the true view of the great perfection, it is consummated in the natural great perfection in the manner of being non-existent, open, spontaneously present, and singular. The most ultimate Samaya has only 4 points: non-existence, openness, singularity, and spontaneous presence. These 4 points are taught by Longchenpa in the Treasury of the Natural State, one of the 7 treasuries of the Great Perfection. The entire content of the Treasury of the Natural State is encompassed by these 4 points. The view of the Great Perfection is non-existence, its meditation is singularity, its conduct is openness, and its fruition is spontaneous presence. I believe that is how it is stated. When you have the opportunity, you can consult the Dharma text we translated earlier. We distributed it to everyone last year, didn't we? At the time, we distributed it to the students outside the academy, including the lifelong students. Although the lifelong student program has been somewhat controversial, and some of the lifelong students have not been very cooperative, I believe we did distribute the Treasury of the Natural State to them before. The Great Perfection Treasury of the Natural State is entirely devoted to these 4 points. Ultimately, the view is non-existence and the meditation is singularity. Non-existence refers to the view of the indivisibility of purity and evenness. Singularity means practicing within this view of the indivisibility of purity and evenness. Seeing the pure and the impure as equal is the conduct of openness, and the fruition is spontaneous presence. I believe these are the 4 points it teaches. They are ultimately perfected within the natural great perfection. Concerning this principle, the Tantra states, if one abides in union with the Samaya of evenness, the great perfection of evenness will be achieved. If transgressed, there will be no Buddhahood. This is what the Guhyagarbha Tantra says. If one practices evenly the view of primordial purity and primordial evenness, then one will abide in the Samaya of primordial purity and evenness. With this equality of the view, one can abide within the Samaya of evenness. In that case, one can attain the great fruition of evenness. If one departs from this, then there is no so-called Buddhahood. So the view of the indivisibility of purity and evenness is profoundly important. This completes the explanation of the chapter on the perfection of discipline, the Samaya.
Bandharangara Badma Sodargye Bandharangara Badma Sodargye Bandharangara Badma Sodargye